So, well, first I want to start off with you just telling everyone what your diagnoses are, and then I would like to kind of zone in on a couple just so we can focus on talking about other areas.
Okay. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder,
Okay.
post-traumatic stress disorder, suicidal ideation, and unspecified anxiety disorder.
Okay. So, the unspecified anxiety disorder, what is the definition of that?
Well, I think it's kind of a catch-all bucket when they can't determine exactly what type of anxiety you have.
Okay.
So at that point, it's unspecified,
Okay.
but it's anxiety nonetheless.
And the suicidal ideation, what is the definition of that?
Suicidal ideation is when a person, do I even want to say obsess over suicide? I don't know if that's the correct word, but for me, it was obsessing over suicide because I just saw that as a way out of the pain. And I think that's what most people are really seeking for. Not necessarily to end their life, but they want the pain to stop.
Right.
And the most final way you can get it to stop is by death.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so I want to kind of go into the feelings when you're going through that. So let's start with your anxiety. What do you feel? What do you go through? Are there triggers that bring up anxiety for you? So can you explain the emotions and everything you go through?
There's several triggers for my anxiety.
Okay.
One is if I'm feeling abandoned, because that stems from being abandoned in an empty apartment by my mother when I was 8 years old.
8 years old.
And that was the event that triggered my first anxiety attack.
Okay.
Excuse me, that was the event that triggered my first suicide attempt.
Okay.
That's when I was 8. And that carried on, being suicidal carried on all of my teen years, all through school, because I never felt loved or worthy because of my parents. Both my parents were alcoholics. Excuse me, and they were just too consumed in their addiction to be able to parent me the way that I needed to be parented. So I grew up in a very violent home. I saw a lot of abuse towards my mother. My father, well, he even pulled a gun on the both of us, but he was very, very abusive. And I used to watch my mother get beat. So the atmosphere I grew up in, I'm even going to say anxiety probably started maybe as a toddler. I would pull whole braids out of my head.
Wow.
Because I was always so anxious.
Okay.
And then where we lived at that time when I was younger was with my godmother and her husband, but that was the place all the drunks hung out.
Okay.
So I was around, that atmosphere all the time. So it was, I didn't know how to cope with it, so that's where I would start pulling my hair out.
Wow. So as young as 8 years old.
Yeah, so that was the first suicide attempt.
Okay.
I don't even know how the concept of death enters into a child's mind that early.
Yeah.
But I can remember, at this time I was living with my grandmother.
Okay.
Because after my mother left, I came home from school one day and she had moved out. So the apartment was completely empty except for a note on the table. that said, I moved to Cleveland, you're going to live with Mom, which was my grandmother, and Uncle Wayne is going to pick you up. Everything was gone from the apartment except for a table because she had to have somewhere to put the note. And I had no clue. When I left that morning, the apartment looked like it always did. I had a key. And so when I came back home, it was just totally empty. And it probably didn't take him that long to come and get me, but it felt like forever just standing there.
You were 8 years old.
Because, I couldn't sit anywhere, I just stood there.
Yeah.
And it just so happened one day when I was at my grandmother's, I looked in the medicine cabinet and there was a bottle that had one pill in it. It was a round brown pill, I'll never forget it. And the bottle said, fatal if taken by children. And I said,
And you were 8.
I was 8. So I took half of it because I didn't want to get in trouble. I wanted it to appear the pill was still in the bottle. I took the pill and I went to school. And to this day, I don't remember saying anything to anybody. I don't know if she took the pill, if she saw that it was only a half a pill in the bottle, or if something in her spirit told her to, I don't know what it was. But the next thing I know, her and my aunt was at the school, picked me up, took me to the hospital, and that was the first time I had my stomach pumped.
I know when I was 5 years old is when the last time I can remember feeling like I just couldn't be happy. I didn't know what it was, but I couldn't be happy. I can't even think about, imagine. I didn't not have any suicidal thoughts at that age. It was like all the way to 15. So I can't even imagine like what you're feeling. The thought of, I don't want to be here anymore. Was it basically like just because you knew your mom was gone and you felt that was painful, and like I'm just trying to understand at 8 years old.
At
like,
that
how
point,
did you,
it was already stuff built up on top of that.
on top of it. Okay.
At a very early age, I used to watch my mother get beat on a regular basis.
Okay.
And she would sometimes run and get into bed with me, thinking that would stop my father from beating her. But he would just drag her out of the bed by her hair across the floor and continue to beat her, and I would watch. He was very, very abusive. That I can remember, and probably, I think maybe PTSD probably started at 5.
Sure.
He came home from work drunk one night. And I was in the bed with my mom, and he stood at the foot of the bed with his pistol, pointing it at the both of us. He pointed at one of us and said, well, if I shoot her, then she's going to do this and that. But then he pointed, to the next one. And then if I shoot her, she's going to do this. And he's going back and forth with this pistol that I'm assuming is loaded. I don't know. And the only thing I can remember is that my whole body shook with fear. And my mother just held on to me. And it's just as clear today as it was then. And I've never had that experience where my whole body just trembled. And so I'm going to imagine PTSD at that point. If you believe in things happening in utero, she used to also get beat while she was pregnant with me, and told me that he had even kicked her in the stomach. So if you believe in different spirits and things, I believe the spirit of probably rejection may have set in then. Yeah. So I've never felt wanted. Okay. And then I had to care for them as if I was the adult. So at age 5, they would put a chair up to a gas range, and I would have to fry bacon and eggs and make toast for them because they were so hungover the next day. I mean, you wake up and the house is torn apart, there's glass everywhere, everything's broken apart, and they have hangover, so you have to cook and and take care of them. So I've been taking care of people my whole entire life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was.
That is, I'm kind of speechless, like just listening to this.
Yeah.
So, is that where suicidal ideation comes from? How many attempts have you tried?
I had so many attempts. 8 years old was the first one. And I don't think, I think middle school is where it kind of picked back up again. And I would just, well, let me back up. After my mother left and moved to Cleveland, and I had to move with my grandmother, that suicide attempt happened. But then there were times when I would just, if there were pill bottles in the cabinet, I would just pour out a whole handful and gulp a whole handful down at the same time. And obviously didn't die, but I would get very sick and throw up. But there was never any conversations about it. So for me, that validated the fact that I wasn't important and I really wasn't lovable. And so that's how I grew up, feeling that there must be something wrong with me. So if your mother and your father don't want you, then it must be me. So I grew up with a very low self-esteem, not loving myself, not thinking I was worthy of anything. So that's how I lived my life, and then I allowed myself to be treated that way by others.
In relationships, I'm assuming.
In relationships, absolutely.
Because unfortunately, when we go through certain things with our parents, we are attracted, for some reason, we're attracted to that. Instead of looking for the opposite, we always end up with the same thing. So, by the time you did your last attempt, how old were you, and what number was that for you?
I've never really counted.
Okay.
I'm gonna say at least a dozen.
Wow.
But actually, the last time really wasn't a suicide attempt.
Okay.
I was just, and that's the closest I ever came. I was married at the time to an individual that was on crack, and we had a big blow up when he finally came home the next day after getting his first paycheck, and it was all gone by the time he came home. And I had been carrying all the weight up until that point. And I had just exploded, because up until then I was doing all that I knew to do to be a good wife, to be a good Christian woman, trying to do everything right. And there was so much that went on, in the marriage before it got to that point. That day was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. And I grabbed a handful of pills, took those while we were arguing. I was trying to just shut down. It was a Saturday. I wanted to just shut down, and when I woke up it was Monday and I could leave and go to work. I just wanted those days to disappear. But I was so mad I wasn't really thinking about what I was doing. And so after I took the first handful of pills and nothing happened, and we're still arguing and we're going back and forth, I grabbed another bottle. One was pain pills, one was sleeping pills. And I took a handful of those. I just dumped them in and just took them. And we're still arguing back and forth. And in an instant, everything stopped. I couldn't move, I couldn't talk, I couldn't do anything. But I could see and I could hear, but I couldn't respond. So I was he put me in a car, and he was talking to me, but he kept slapping me. And I guess it was to keep me alert, but it was harder slaps than it needed to be.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, boy, some of the things I was thinking, if I could just get to you right, if I could move something, I would just really it wouldn't be nice. So by the time I got to the hospital, I had stopped breathing. My heart had stopped. I was in ICU on life support. It was not a good situation.
That was the last time, right?
That was
How
the
long
last
ago
time,
was that?
and that was 2011.
11. Okay.
Yeah, so that wasn't that long ago.
Wow.
Well, no. Back up. That was 2003. The last time, now that situation, I wasn't trying, but I almost succeeded.
Exactly.
But the last time when I actually had a plan and I was going to go through with it, that was 2011.
Okay.
I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2002.
Okay.
And I worked until 2010. And in 2000, after amount of years, I just couldn't continue with my job, so I had to come off my job. And I couldn't get help anywhere from any agencies. I couldn't get help because I didn't have any income. And I didn't understand that because I thought the agencies were there to help you if you didn't have income.
Right.
So it became, I felt like I became a burden because I didn't have income for like 11 months. So I had started putting together a plan. I had rationalized in my mind that my family would be better off without me. The last thing I wanted to be was a burden on anyone.
Yeah, I can understand that.
So, I called the insurance company trying to see, what benefits would be paid out to her. And, I'm rationalizing, well, they'll cry for a couple of months, but then they'll have the insurance money. She can pay her bills off, they go on the trip, and their life will go back as normal. And, I'm just making it okay for everybody, because that was one of the things I always did. With all of my suicide attempts, I would always do things like clean my room up first.
Okay, make sure everything
and do
was
all
in
the dishes,
order.
make sure everything was in order. So when my grandmother would find me dead, she wouldn't be mad at me.
Yeah, I've been there. So
Just that, that irrational thinking.
yeah, so it's 2011. It's now 2018. So that's a long time span since, especially with your suicidal ideation, right? Is that recovery for you? And what got you to the point that you stopped trying to commit suicide?
At that point, I had seen psychiatrists before and psychologists before, and I had been on and off medication, for years. That was the first. I had never been in that place before where I had no control over my life, because I had always worked, and I was always, self-sufficient. At this point, I lost total power of my life. I felt like a leaf blowing in the wind. And my thinking, I had never isolated as much as I had isolated before. I had never been without hope. This was totally new for me. I was totally, as an adult, I was totally without hope. And what happened, I'm a veteran, so I was at the VA all the time for appointments. And I started noticing some of the other veterans, you would see them, some would be blind, some missing an arm, some missing a leg, some missing a couple of limbs. But they were still going on. They could still manage to say good morning, they could still manage to get a smile out. And I felt comfortable in that situation. So I started volunteering there, because I was there so much for appointments. Sometimes I would have 3 or 4 hours in between appointments and I didn't want to leave. So I said, well, maybe I can do something around here. And what I found out was that when I started volunteering and helping other people, it actually helped me get out of my own head. And I could say good morning to somebody and it could put a smile on their face, and that made me feel good. Oh, well, they just smile. Okay, well, that's pretty good. And so the VA had offered a lot of programs, a lot of classes. And I decided that was the lowest I had ever been, and I didn't know what to do. So I started taking some of the classes they offered at the VA. And that was the beginning of my recovery journey. Now, I still, from time to time, I'll get the thoughts. They'll come when I'm really, really stressed or when my depression kicks in. But it's different now because I don't crave death anymore. Like I used to wish for it and almost crave it.
Okay, and is that stem from the suicidal ideation? Is that what that really means?
Yeah,
It's
that
you just
for me.
Okay.
There's just, I could just never see any other options. And also, there wasn't anything on this earth, and sometimes even, a lot of times I could think of my children, and that would give me enough incentive to hold on, or give me something to hold on to.
Right.
But then sometimes it would be my children that would hurt me so much until I just wanted to get away from them. Or in my sick thinking, I would think, well, if I go ahead and complete suicide, then they'll finally see how much pain I was really in. Then they'll finally get it.
Yeah.
But all of that, was the illness talking.
Okay. Well, I know last year, that's how I met you. After I went through all of that and I figured out that I didn't even know such thing. Remember, I was like, there's a recovery? And I was like, when I found that and I started helping other people and like educating myself, it turned my whole life around. Like it made me want to live. You know what I mean? Like it's like I have to be here so I can help these people. So I can, and I think that's so awesome that you found something to help other people, and maybe to see that, wow, this person doesn't have a leg and he is still like wanting to live and wanting to be here. So is that what? Because I know you work for NAMI.
Well, for me, the turning point was I realized that everything that I had gone through was to bring me to where I was now.
Awesome.
In order for me to be able to help other people, because the trials that we go through is where our anointing is. Okay. I can reach somebody who suffers from depression, or who suffers from suicidal ideation. I may not have a whole lot to offer someone who's addicted to drugs, because I've never been addicted to drugs.
Right.
But what I do have to offer are my life experiences. And so when I realized that all of those experiences was so I can be able to help other people, it wasn't just because God was bored and he just said, well, let me just let her go through this and let her go through that, because I don't have nothing else to do today, so let me entertain myself.
Right.
It wasn't for that.
Yeah.
It was to make me, for such a time as this, to make me the individual that I am now. And so when I finally realized that, it made everything okay.
Okay, so let's talk about your awesome work that you do now, because I really want to tell people about what you do, because it helps me and I feel like it's important. So tell them about what you do, what NAMI stands for, and what your title is and how it makes you feel every day, because I see you do some awesome work and I can't even tell you what a blessing you've been to me. But I would like others to know also, like, just about what you do and what NAMI is. Okay.
So NAMI stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness.
Okay.
And it is a national organization. Actually, it's international now because they teach it in other countries as well.
Wow.
So I came across NAMI working, volunteering at the VA. I heard about it. Okay. And the first class that I took, the first NAMI class I took was peer-to-peer. And at that time it was a 10-week class, and it just taught me about different mental health conditions, the symptoms, warning signs, triggers, self-awareness, teaching me how to think and teaching me that self-awareness piece. When I start to think a certain way, I have certain emotions, and then I respond in a certain way. So I'm always getting the same results, but I never knew why. So it was a great awakening for me. It was a great first step. It was like a springboard, and it helped me so much. I wanted to be able to help other people. I was like, well, everybody needs to know about this.
Yeah.
So I became a mentor so I could teach the class. So I started teaching it. But then that wasn't even enough. I was like, okay, I need to be able to teach other people how to teach it so people can just keep on passing on the information. So I became a state trainer. So I've trained in several states, the peer-to-peer class. Then I also, so peer-to-peer is a class that's for the individuals that live with a mental health concern.
Okay.
And then there's also a support group for the individuals that live with a mental health concern, and that's called Connections.
Okay.
So now I started a connection support group at my church because, as we know, and especially in our culture, stigma is so huge in the church, and a lot of them don't believe in mental health conditions. They think it's all spiritual, and there are spiritual elements, but we're not talking about spiritual elements.
Exactly.
We're talking about the physical elements. So I wanted to start the support group in the church, one, so people in the church can get help, because I just think it's so bad for you to go to church and then leave the same way you came in, not getting any help, and afraid to ask for help because you feel like you're going to be judged. Or told that you don't have enough faith, or thinking that God is mad at you, or there's some kind of character flaw. So I wanted to have the support there so people could get an understanding that our brain is an organ, just like our kidneys or our heart or our liver. And if your kidneys get sick, you may develop diabetes. If your heart gets sick, you may develop congestive heart failure or any number of diseases. Your brain can get sick as well. It's an organ, it's not you. And so, we can develop bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or any number of mental health conditions. So I wanted to have it at the church to kind of break up the stigma, and give people a place to go to say, it's okay.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did there. We also have a program called Ending the Silence. Ending the Silence is a program where we go, and I'm very passionate about this, is because we deal with kids.
Yeah.
And so we go into the middle schools and the high schools, and we do the presentation in the classroom with two presenters. There's a lead presenter and a young adult presenter. And so the lead presenter shows the PowerPoint and the videos, and it teaches the kids about what mental health is and what mental health conditions are, and the warning signs of a mental health condition, warning signs of suicide, how to ask for help, where to go for help.
That's good.
And then we have the young person who actually gives an account of their struggle with their mental health journey. Someone young enough that the kids in the classroom could connect with them.
Right.
Because a lot of them are going through the same things.
Right.
And then, we leave time for them to ask questions, and we do an evaluation. Now, for the family members and caregivers of people with mental health concerns, we have a class for them. It's called Family to Family. It's an excellent class.
Gentle is so important.
I love
for
it.
the families to
It's so
understand.
important, because the family, and even families don't understand, if they don't have to deal with it themselves, or if they've never been educated, it's easy for people to think that you're just making up excuses, or just get over it, or just snap out of it, pull yourself together. It's just not that easy.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wishes this on themselves.
Yeah.
So there's a class for them, and then they also have a support group, their own support group.
For the family.
For the families.
Okay.
And the reason we don't mix the two together is oftentimes some of our issues are with our family members or our
Right.
loved ones or caregivers.
Yeah.
And so if you need to be free to discuss what's really going on with you, and the
can't do
person
it.
that you have an issue with is sitting right next to you,
You're
you're not
not
going
gonna talk about
to you're
it.
not going to do it.
Yeah.
So we keep those totally separate.
Well, that is, I know the program has helped me, so I just wanted to get that out there. So I want to kind of, reel back in just a little bit. And I want to ask a really deep question. Were you ever able to ask your mom why she left?
Never.
And does it still affect you today?
Never. It does. My mother actually passed right after she turned 30. Alcohol took her out, and I was 13 at the time. So I never got a chance to get those answers from her. And then when I became a mother myself, I began to hate her. Because as a mother and the love I have for my own child, I couldn't understand, well, she was a mother and as connected as I feel to my child and as much as I want to, support and protect my child, she didn't do that for me. And at this time, I didn't understand mental health conditions or addiction.
Okay.
So my mother had schizophrenia. And then she was battling, alcoholism, and then she was severely abused, by my father.
Right.
And so again, doing work on myself and understanding mental health conditions and understanding addiction, then I was able to go back at her life and look at her life and the things that she had suffered in her life.
Became more compassionate.
And I became very compassionate, and all of that kind of melted away.
Okay, good.
And it really was replaced with love.
Okay. So I want to, my amazement is where you came from and what you went through, and to look at you now, which I think will give so many people hope that you can go what I call from darkness to recovery to the light, right? So what message would you like to leave at the end of this interview to everyone out there?
It's not over till it's over.
Okay.
It is not over until it's over. There's always hope. For me, I had to get to a point where I was at the end of myself. I didn't know what else to do. I had done everything that I knew to do. And the last time that I really was going to complete suicide, I'm gonna say it was divine intervention. I was sitting in the pharmacy at the VA, waiting on the prescription. I had already planned to go home. I knew what I was gonna do when I got home. I hadn't spoken a word to anyone, but my plan was in place. And it just so happened that someone came and sat next to me and started a conversation and told me they didn't know why they were there. As soon as they said they didn't know why they were there, I knew why they were there. I knew they were there because God sent them there.
Okay.
And that kind of interrupted that plan for the moment. And so there's times when, if you can just find something to hang on to,
Okay.
and maybe you can only hang on for an hour, and then you get through this hour, and then you have to hang on for another hour.
Mm-hmm.
But find something to hang on for. One thing, and I don't know why this is coming up in my mind now, but another thing that made me so unloving of myself was all of the molestations that I suffered as a child, at the hands of male relatives, in my family, and having to visit a gynecologist for the first time when I was around 8 years old. I don't know if they use instruments for children that small, but I know that was a very traumatic experience.
Yeah.
And so that was something else that just solidified to me that you're worthless. So it's very, very important the way that we treat our children, the way that we talk to them, and the way that we make them feel, and allow them to express their emotions. Because too many people don't allow their children to, especially boys. Boys don't cry, suck that up, dry your face off. Mm-hmm. Let them have their emotions. But then when they become men, then we can't understand how come you can't show your emotions? How come you can't express your emotions? Because you've been told to shut up your whole life.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was just a side piece. That one was free.
Okay, I appreciate it. So, and just the last question, and just do a sentence if you could for me.
Okay.
What is recovery to you?
Recovery to me is being able to get up every day, put one foot in front of the other, not allow the past to hold me captive.
That's beautiful.
To be able to have hope and to continue to keep going in spite of and regardless of.
That's beautiful. That's perfect.
That's it.
Thank you for doing this and for being so open with me. I really appreciate you.
Good.
In the dark, you lift my eyes for this journey you designed. You're like guiding me. Let my heart align with you in your word and in your truth. Your voice calling me, faith in the unseen. Oh, you reign in my soul. Oh, you reign in my soul. I will never be alone. I will never be alone. Oh, you reign in my soul. Oh, you reign in my soul. I will never be alone. I will never be alone. Though my world may fall and fail, you alone are sovereign still.